Sewing 101. Do you know where I learned to sew? In middle school.
Family consumer science.
Something like that.
What is up, YouTube? Back in the garage. I believe last video was the engine first start on the LS RX8. So this video, we got to address a few issues. So the engine fired up, no problem. Once I got the MAF hooked up and everything, it actually started and idled very well for the first couple seconds. I did have a slight fuel leak from here. I tried to address that and adjust that fitting a little bit. I'm gonna see if that helps. I did have a small oil leak down here at my adapter, but I found my AN lines were actually loose and I forgot to tighten them. So I tightened those up and those should be good now. The other main issue we had, which is the biggest issue and is gonna involve the most work, is my clutch. I tried to bleed it and the internal slave cylinder was leaking. So this was something that it's kind of my fault that it's leaking. I really should have bench bled it and I just didn't. So what I'm gonna try to do today is take the transmission off while it's in the car. So I'm gonna go underneath. I'm gonna try to unbolt the transmission, pull it back for enough space to look at the slave cylinder while also not disconnecting the clutch lines or anything, because I'd like to keep everything the same. That way I can see where it's leaking from and see what the problem is. This is one of those moments I really wish I had a lift, but what I'm gonna try to do is crawl underneath here and just pull this transmission back enough. I'll just unhook the drive shaft and take out the 7 bolts or whatever is, however many is around there. So the other thing I'm gonna look at while I'm in there, since I'm leaking brake fluid inside of my clutch, I wanna make sure that no brake fluid got on the clutch disc, because I'm pretty sure it can get saturated and ruin it. So I'm gonna look at that. If I have to get a new clutch disc, not the worst thing in the world. I'm not worried about the pressure plate or the flywheel because I didn't really run the car at all. So I'm not worried about that fluid getting burned into that or anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started and get to work. All right, so good news. I was able to get the transmission off enough to look in here. And I was able to tell that the leak is coming from this fitting that goes into the slave cylinder held by that little pin. I'm not sure quite what's going on there, but the good news is I can get my hand in there and hopefully switch out that fitting pretty easily. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to do that. As you guys know, this is the original quick disconnect fitting that comes in the GM slave cylinders. So basically, I guess I'm missing, there's a seal that goes on the end, and then the groove here, you slide a pin in and that holds the seal up tight, and that's what seals it. So what I used were these adapters to adapt that fitting to an AN3, I believe. Luckily, I got 2 of them. So I'm gonna try to switch this out, see if I can find out why the other one isn't sealing. All right, guys, so I found the issue and there's nobody to blame but myself. So stupid me when I was putting this together. The seal that came on this fitting, it was really snug. Like I couldn't get this in because of how tight it was. And I was stupid and switched out the seal for the one that came on the on the slave cylinder from factory. And it went in easier. So I just used that seal, but they are different. So I'm pretty sure that the seal that I put in wasn't sealing correctly with this fitting. So I switched it out for the fitting that came with this, or for the seal that came with this fitting, and it should be good now. So that's one of those dumb things that whenever I put it together, I don't know what I was thinking. So I guess I thought it would seal fine, but because that fitting kind of just uses a pin to hold it in place, I think it does need to be super tight like that to get in there. So I think that's why I was leaking. I'm gonna put it back in. I'm gonna try to bench bleed it while my transmission's still kind of chilling and make sure it's not leaking. All right, so got the transmission up. While the transmission was still dropped, I tried to do like a reverse bleed type of thing. I seemed to get fluid the whole way through the system, but I couldn't like get air bubbles to come out or anything. So I decided to go ahead and put a few bolts in the transmission, get it mated back up. And I just pumped the clutch pedal a few times with all the fluid in there, and it actually already built up pressure in the pedal springing back. So I'm gonna just go ahead and bleed this conventionally, get all the air out, and I think it should be good to go. What is up, YouTube? Back in the garage. Got a haircut, and we're back in the garage working on stuff. Matrix is gonna get an oil change real quick, the daily. I've been neglecting that for too long, so I don't want to let that go any longer. And then I'm gonna finish up putting together the RX8. So I had this thing apart last night, found out my issue with the clutch line that wasn't sealing, bled the clutch, and that still was holding pressure this morning, so it's all good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the drive shaft bolted back up, get this thing back to where it was. That way I can move on to the other things that I need to worry about. So I think this video is gonna be pretty short, but here at the end, I figured I'd get started on something that's gonna be coming up soon. I wanna go ahead and throw the exhaust manifolds on and get an idea of what I need to do with my initial start of my exhaust, where the O2 bung is gonna be, because I'd like to go ahead and get those started. That way I can start this thing up again with the O2 sensors in. So here's what I wanted to look at here. Basically what I'm planning on doing is creating a extension from this flange here down to a V-band somewhere down here, basically to create like a long tube header that I don't have to disconnect at the flange. I can disconnect it at the V-band down here. I think that'll be the cleanest way to do it, because then I don't have to keep using gaskets here, and I have a spot to disconnect it at the header basically. So I think I could just run a straight piece at an angle from here, and that would accomplish what I want it to, or I have a few bends that I can use to get to where I need to get here. So but it's looking like on this side I'll have plenty of room. I'll probably end up, I want to say I'll heat wrap my exhaust here just to protect my oil lines. On the other side, you can see I'm pretty close to the starter here. I'm gonna have to tuck some wires in places where it doesn't get too hot. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. I'll have to run a bend for sure on this side to make it down through this corner. This will be tucked up, so I'll have plenty of room. It's just a matter of getting it to the right spot. So it's gonna be a little tricky. So yeah, it's looking like I'll be able to do what I want to do down there. I'm not going to get started on it today, but that exhaust is coming up on the list of things to do. So in the next couple weeks, I'll probably start on that. And basically to get this thing running completely, I'll need the exhaust. And then I think I said I ordered a fuse box to do a standalone fuse box. That way I'm not splicing into my Mazda fuse box, and this engine will be running correctly on its own. So to recap, the clutch was leaking whenever I finally put this thing together. It was my fault, and took me about a day to get it fixed and get the transmission bolted back up. So not too bad overall, pretty minor considering the other things that could have been wrong with the engine. I don't know about the transmission yet for sure, but yeah, pretty lucky that's all it was, and that I got it back together that quick. And we can keep moving forward. Definitely stay tuned, and thank you everybody for watching. Have a good night.